morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for your appearance. But at a time when we have the greatest housing catastrophe in the history of our state, and we have overspending in our Department of Health where there are no checks and balances, billions have been wasted annually. We have government that displays complete incompetence with the management of the public finances. And this story comes out of a clear blue sky, manna from heaven, to distract from the issues that really impact ordinary daily lives. The government are delighted with the story because it's taken the spotlight from them on a run-up to Dáil recess. And I've watched the rolling media brawl for the last week, or nearly week and a half, and I must admit I have some experience in media brawl. It's clear that this media circus can be reduced to the following facts. Certain people within RTE conceived a scheme of deceit for a number of reasons. One, to retain the services of Ryan Tubridy, and two, to portray to the general public and to the staff of RTE that Tubridy had taken a pay cut. The public, certain staff at RTE and this committee were lied to. No checks and balances in any systems of checks and balances will prevent deceit. And that's just a fact of life. With a large organisation such as RTE, people run for cover and they immediately look for a scapegoat or scapegoats, as may be the case. And in what would appear to me generally is the case, those who identified the scapegoats were themselves the cause of the controversy quite often. The act of deceit is only surpassed by the more despicable act of scapegoating. Never have I seen more obvious scapegoating than in this debacle. And RTE conceived the scheme of the deceit and induced Ryan Tubridy, whom I don't know personally, nor do I know his family, nor any of the other people that have been mentioned in relation to Ryan Tubridy. But he was induced with the pay package to stay. And a number of members have confirmed this week that there was no wrongdoing on Ryan Tubridy's behalf. And the people in front of us effectively dismissed Dee Forbes and then issued a lengthy press release scapegoating her. The quality of management should be judged by the way they deal with the situations they find themselves in. And I can assure you, what I have heard today and yesterday and for the last week would indicate to me that this management does not have the skill set to deal with what's before them. Other than all they have done is look for scapegoats. And whilst RTE say Ryan Tubridy did nothing wrong, your actions do not support that position. Tubridy no longer presents his programme. And in my view, the act of taking Ryan Tubridy off air was wrong, and it has compounded the controversy whilst at the same time destroying Mr. Tubridy's reputation in the scapegoating. And it was ill-advised and one that should have only been done with the approval of the board. It's as plain as a pike staff to any person with a modicum of common sense that this act will cost RTE and, of course, the taxpayer far more in compensation to Tubridy than the 150,000 that we're talking about that was legally due anyway. So the bill for the action will have to be delivered at some point in the future. And I have one question with regard this, I suppose, delegation. Who made the decision to take Ryan Tubridy off air, bearing in mind your continuous statements that he did nothing wrong. Now, and I am assuming that one of two people can answer that question, because it certainly wasn't anyone that isn't here.
So that's ultimately, because I'm the interim Deputy Director General, that is my decision as Editor-in-Chief. So why he's off air is because RT has an obligation to be independent.
I'm
and
sorry,
impartial.
I can't hear Mr. Lynch.
Can you not?
For some reason. No.
How's that? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. So as Deputy Director General, it is my decision to take Ryan Tubridy off air in consultation with the Director of Content.
And the Director of Content is not here?
Correct.
Was that decision put before the board?
No.
Are you telling me now, Mr. Lynch, that in your capacity with someone who isn't here, the Director of Content, you made a decision, in effect, which has exposed hundreds of thousands, if not millions in compensation, have exposed RTE and, in effect, the taxpayer. That's the decision made by you.
I'm the Editor-in-Chief, yes.
So you made that decision. And what was your rationale? You made the statement also that he has done nothing wrong.
So as I understand it from legal advice...
Are you saying now he did something wrong?
No.
So you continue with the statement that Ryan Tubridy has done nothing wrong?
It's not wrong. He has done nothing illegal. The contract that Ryan Tubridy engaged with is illegal.
Is there a difference?
There is a difference.
You're asserting a difference.
There is a difference between the editorial...
Do you think when it comes to compensation there will be a difference? Because they'll only be interested in the legal element. So we are back with the question I put to you. Will you resign over the compensation that will be paid to Ryan Tubridy?
So, as I said in my opening statement...
That's a binary question. Yes or no would be the answer. Will you resign and make yourself accountable for a decision that you can be sure has ruined Ryan Tubridy? He's taken off the air under the assertion by RTE that he has done nothing wrong. You didn't say he didn't do anything illegal. You said he had done nothing wrong. And I'm sure that that will be brought up a number of times to you. Will you resign, yes or no?
That would be a matter for the incoming Director General.
So you, just one other, I just go to Miss O'Reilly here. Are you happy that you have been exposed now as the chair of RTE to compensation without a shadow of a doubt? We're all of a frame of mind here commercially that we know the realm of these types of things will run into hundreds of thousands, if not millions, because he's not the only person that has been mentioned. And it has been the assertion of RTE from both yourself and Mr. Lynch that he did nothing wrong. But yet we're faced with a big bill. How do you feel about that decision being made, of which you seemingly had no act or part?
So just to clarify...
No.
I'm sorry, this pertains to your question. It is not the role of the board to get involved in editorial decision-making.
Excuse me,
the role of the editor-in-chief.
Editorial decision-making? So who's the editorial decision made by? Are we back to Mr. Lynch?
The editor-in-chief.
Which is? Mr. Lynch at this point in time. So really, all of the bluster that you've come in here with about what you're going to do, it's only bluster, isn't it? Because you've exposed RTE among you with a massive bill for compensation to someone that you assert as having done nothing wrong. And yet you've not just thrown them all under the bus, you've backed over them and reversed at speed. So can you tell me, Mr. Lynch, are you going to be accountable in the future for when the compensation is paid? Because if he did nothing wrong, what was the basis and the rationale for taking him off the air? And paying him while he's off the air, and paying another presenter to do his radio programme. Are you going to be accountable?
Yeah, I'll be completely accountable.
So you will resign. You're going to confirm then today that you will resign when that happens, because as sure as light follows day, that's going to happen.
No, I'm just saying I'm taking full responsibility for the decision for Ryan Tubridy not to be on air.
So, sorry, Chair, we need to clarify that. So are you saying you will resign, Mr. Lynch, and be accountable?
For that decision, no.
No, thank you.
Well, then talk is cheap.
Deputy.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome, Mr. Backhurst. This is your first appearance. I just want to say, Chair, frankly, I think it's disgraceful that Mr. Lynch will come in and introduce emails that we have not received as a committee, and I just like that on the record. It was bad enough the other day that we exclaimed having received 40 pages at 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, and the total disregard that was shown to our committee secretariat that this could happen today. It doesn't bode well for the future. So I want to turn to Mr. Backhurst, because Mr. Backhurst, you did a roadshow whilst we sat as a committee here on Tuesday with Ryan Tubridy and Noel Kelly. You were given interviews. During your interviews, Mr. Kelly's evidence to this committee was that he knew nothing of about the scheme to deceive, as Ms. Niralik has termed it previously. He knew nothing about that scheme. So do you stand over your comments? Do you stand over your comments? Yeah, well, you stand over those comments. So
Which comments in particular, Deputy?
Well, let me read it to you, because it was a News Talk interview that was later documented, or I should say written by a journalist in The Independent, and it says, Mr. Backhurst made it clear that he held Kelly, along with some RTE managers who had behaved shamefully, responsible for the whole affair. Whether RTE, and this is quote, whether RTE is fully to blame, I'm not sure. I accept that. He said there were more than one party to the agreement, and I listened to the interview, and the interviewer asked you, are you talking about Noel Kelly? And you said yes. So you stand over those comments?
I stand over those comments 100%. Okay. There were two sides to this agreement, and one of them was RTE, and we have held our hands up.
That's fine. You said yes, but are you telling me then, in your view, Mr. Kelly lied to this committee?
No, I'm not. All I'm simply saying is that there were two sides to this agreement, and I think we've seen that from the evidence.
Sorry, Deputy, Mr. Backhurst, you can't have it both ways. This needs to be clarified. You are stating clearly that Noel Kelly knew of the scheme to deceive entirely, in its entirety.
That's not what I said, Deputy. I said there were two sides to this agreement.
But there's three parties. The two sides. So let me tell you why your side doesn't appear to be credible. Because we have documentary evidence in a 40-page document that gives credibility to Noel Kelly's and Ryan Tubridy's version. I'm afraid I haven't seen any, or anyone in this committee hasn't seen any documentary evidence to support your claim. So can you tell me how you stand over comments that say Noel Kelly was fully aware of the scheme to deceive, and that has been put out by Mr. Lynch and others, and their evidence is all in the Blacks list?
Deputy, I'm sorry, Deputy, you're putting words in my mouth here. I said there were two sides to this agreement. I did not say he was aware of some of the issues you just touched on. All I was asked was...
Sorry, well, Mr. Lynch this morning said that Mr. Kelly was aware that Renault, Mr. Lynch, I'll come to you, that Renault were no longer sponsoring this deal. Are Renault the current sponsors of RTE, the Late Late Show? That's a very simple yes or no, I would have
Renault have been the sponsor of the Late Late Show.
Okay,
sorry, Deputy, can I actually finish the answer?
Well, that's just a yes or no question.
No, I'm trying to give it... No, I'm sorry, it's not just a yes or no question.
Deputy, no, just give it, if you can answer it concisely.
I can answer it concisely. It takes more than one word.
No, I'm afraid, Chair, I don't want to run down the clock. I'm simply asking. But, Chair, to be fair...
I want to be fair. No, sorry.
Well, I am being fair because we're hearing oral evidence. We have 40 pages of documented evidence that support witnesses who appeared here. I'm asking a very simple question. Are Renault currently, or have in the past up to now, been the sponsors of RTE's
And
nomenclature.
I have to allow Mr. Backhurst to
But that's
answer
a yes or
concisely.
no answer.
I know he has been fairly concise in his answers now, in fairness.
Thank you, Chair. Deputy, I will try and be concise. They have been the sponsors of the late, as I understand it, and Colin may add more to this. I think the contract for the next series is up for renewal.
That's fine. But they were at no stage did the contract lapse as sponsors for the Late Show.
I don't think it's lapsed. I think they've absolutely stuck to
So
what
it's
they
up
agreed.
for renewal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's fine. So
sorry, Adrian, is that correct?
I didn't. That's all I need
Yeah,
to
okay,
know.
okay.
So but I have to go back on the basis that there is no documentary evidence to support what has been put forward by yourselves. Can you tell me where the evidence documented is that you say Noel Kelly knew of how this scheme operated?
Sorry, Deputy, I'd like to say again, I did not say that. I said there were two sides to this agreement. We've seen copious emails between RTE and Noel Kelly management which demonstrate there were two sides to this
But why weren't they
agreement.
provided to the committee? Why couldn't you support the committee in understanding what your claim was?
I'm sorry, you asked me about what I said, and I'm saying I stand by what I said. There were two sides to this agreement, and I'm not saying that Mr. Kelly was I'm sorry, I'm not saying that Mr. Kelly was in any way to blame. I've said that RTE accepts the blame.
Sorry now, Mr. Backhurst, I'll just quote this for you again then. Whether RTE is fully to blame, I'm not sure I accept that. The interviewer, you said there was more than one party. So you are blaming Mr. Kelly.
I'm saying we should accept the vast majority of the blame, but there were two sides to this agreement.
Well, I put it this way, there was certainly a number of parties. We have only supporting documents that supports evidence, that's supporting in evidence what witnesses have said here.
I'm sorry, we don't. You have supporting documents that show there were two sides involved in negotiation here.
No,
That's what
I'm sorry, we have not seen the email that Mr. Lynch has actually disgracefully read into the record, that we are...
Deputy, I'm just going to allow Mr. Lynch just to answer this concisely.
Thank you. Just to, I think it's important to clarify a number of things. One is that the Late programme sponsorship is absolutely separate from the sponsorship.
And I am aware of that, Mr. Lynch. I don't need that clarified. I don't think anybody else does.
I want to make one other point, because just in terms of the language you're using around Noel Kelly, this is very simple, and what I've explained, which is based on the evidence in front of me, Noel Kelly has a contract with RTE which is underwritten by a verbal agreement, which is a completely legal agreement.
Sorry, Chair, I don't need to hear this. I just ask one question.
I just think it's really...
Well, Mr. Lynch, if you want to answer a question, here it is.
Yeah.
Where have you documented an email that has told Noel Kelly that Renault are no longer paying this 75,000?
It's in the Grant Thornton report in terms of...
But hold on now, the Grant Thornton report was only done where at this point in time, when you at the last meeting said that Noel Kelly was fully aware that Renault were no longer paying. You've mentioned an email there, so where have we seen an email to Noel Kelly that says RTE made him aware?
So, Deputy, could I just ask you to move your mic a little bit to the left? It's causing a problem with the sound carrying it, apparently. Thanks.
Move it to the left?
No, you're grand. As I'm looking at it, to the left.
Sorry.
That's all right.
So, Mr. Lynch.
Yeah.
Do we have we documentary evidence that RTE informed Noel Kelly that Renault were no longer going to be paying?
So when Grant Thornton began to investigate the two invoices, they spoke to all the relevant people. Yeah, Geraldine O'Leary was very clear about the fact the documentary evidence that has been provided is the tripartite agreement.
Sorry.
So, I'm sorry, there is a contract with two dates in it. It starts on October the 20th and it ends on December the 31st. It was completely
Mr. Lynch, I'll just
evident, from the testimony, Deputy, from Geraldine O'Leary, that there was no further 6 events. There was no conversation had with Renault. I think that's...
No, I think we haven't seen any evidence of that. That's what you're telling me. I have seen no email that says that the assertion up to now by RTE, who conceived the scheme?
You're talking about the tripartite agreement?
I am.
Yeah, so I think the first document on file is from December 2019. There's an offer there from Breda O'Keefe, copied to the lawyer, which has 420, which wasn't the deal in the end, plus 75. The genesis of the scheme, I don't know. Breda O'Keefe is unsure about it.
I think there's one thing we do know now, not to interrupt you at all, Mr. Lynch, but what we do know is...
Just finish briefly.
Yeah, just to say, obviously the agent has said that these are two separate agreements.
That's not in contest.
Yet we know the agent came back and insisted continually that the sponsorship agreement would be underwritten for the duration of the contract, thereby conjoining both.
I'm sorry,
so the
Mr.
idea
Lynch,
that there are two separate agreements.
Excuse me, and Chair, to be fair, I did not get a fair hearing there. Mr. Lynch has ran down the clock, and I need to ask another question.
Just if you want to ask a question briefly.
Well, I think the reality here is that Mr. Lynch has made a statement, but we know from the tone of the emails that we've seen documented by the previous witnesses that Breda O'Keefe came in and gave the impression that everybody in RTE was opposed to underwriting that agreement, that was absolutely everybody. I'm afraid that's not the evidence we have on record, and RTE has not counteracted that, and neither does Mr. Backhurst.
And there will be a report and recommendations from this committee, and you will have, I know that you will...
well, I think it should be on the record that there isn't an ounce of credibility to back up what either of these witnesses are saying.
I accept a lot of what you're saying there.
Thank you, Chair. And just in relation to that meeting, Mr. Kelly, was the topic Grant Thornton brought up?
No, thank you. The topic was issues around, I suppose, well, really, the Late Late Show timings when it started. During COVID, the Late Late Show finished at 11 o'clock. Well, so the issues were around... And
I don't mean to cut you off, but you're just categorically stating that there was a discussion.
Sorry. Yeah, no, it was very much about issues around the Late Late Show and trying to finish it earlier, etc.
Okay, thank you. But it does seem a bit odd that you'd have been having that discussion given Mr. Tubridy's resignation, or was it just for the remaining shows?
No, it was before. It was before, and it wasn't related to it.
Okay.
Maybe you want to talk about?
No. Were you at that meeting?
Yes, I was. Yeah.
Okay. But it had nothing to do, as you're categorically saying, there was no discussion.
Deputy Murphy, like I said at the statement at the outset, it was one of the untruths I really wanted to clear up here today. And there was no connection between this fiasco and my departure from the Late Late Show, I promise you.
So you'll have watched all of the previous engagements. So is it your view, Mr. Tubridy? And it's hard, like, I don't know, like, look, for a start, I'd like to say you're welcome here.
Thank you for
that. And it's nice that you came without having to be compelled.
Thank you.
But I think it's not that anybody knows how to address you, because everybody feels they know you.
I know, I prefer if you call me Ryan, but I understand that's not the nature of it.
When you call me deputy, but even all that aside,
it's
superfluous. But the reality is this: you will have seen Mr. Adrian Lynch, who is the interim Director General, say that it was possible that you did know pre your announcement.
Yes, that's very unfortunate.
And do you feel, is it your view then, that Mr. Lynch threw you under the bus with that connotation?
Mr. Lynch is entitled to his conjecture, but in this case it's incorrect.
Okay. Well, let me move to your statement, because you have outlined 7 untruths. And to be fair, you've come here to give your side of the story, and we as deputies need to hear both sides and find the truth in between. But I think you have outlined in your statement 7 untruths. And what I'd just like to ask you, is it your view, and maybe this is for Mr. Kelly also, but is it your view that those untruths were intended to deceive not just the public, but the Public Accounts Committee into thinking that you two gentlemen were responsible for everything that has happened here?
I think being frank with you, we watched some of the proceedings quite aghast.
But is it your view that those untruths were intended to deceive?
I would hope that in a more positive moment that wasn't the case, that this is a misunderstanding rather than an intent to deceive. I would hope, but maybe Noel has something better to say about that.
I may not be as kind as Ryan. And I think there were a lot of misunderstandings. I think, as Ryan said at the outset, if everybody had just, at the start, and when we had to ask, can we get the statement, everybody just had sat down and said, what is this?
Yeah.
It's all there, it would have been explained. The 120,000, there was no 120,000, and on and on and on.
Well, just in your case, Mr. Kelly, at some point Mr. Collins was being asked in relation to why he did not ask questions with regard to the invoices being raised with consultancy fees as the description.
Yeah.
He said that because, and I don't want to misquote, but
Sure.
the intimation was that yourself and Dee Forbes had a particularly, he was aware that you had a particularly close relationship.
Yes.
Now, that's not what you said earlier.
No, as I said, I've never even had a cup of tea with her. Like literally,
So you wouldn't-
I've only ever met her with her lawyers and her accountants, and you only ever meet the DG, and as the previous DG, when there's something that.
But in your view, why would either Mr. Collins be of that opinion, or why would he express it
I
in that
have
regard?
no idea whatsoever.
And but in your view, then, do you believe that he intended to deceive this committee?
I honestly can't say. I don't know. And to be honest with you, like there was so many untruths, I just had to stop looking and listening. You know, we were under siege, like unreal.
Well, I think clearly from the notes we've received, and I know we received them late this morning, they're quite comprehensive.
Yes.
In discarding what you believe to be untruths. Like your definition, my definition of an untruth is a lie. It's a lie. If it's not true, it's a lie.
Sure.
So, are you able to say, in your view, that RTE lied to this committee and those representing them?
As you said, there were untruths.
Well, I think that.
Be careful with language.
Well, I think I
But
don't
just-
need to be careful, Chair, because the definition of an untruth is.
Do you wish to answer that, Mr. Kelly, please, Mr. Turbiddy?
I think there's been a lot of lies. Intentional or not, I don't know.
Sorry, can you just repeat that again?
I think there have been a lot of lies, and that's why we're here. Intentional or not, I don't know. I don't know half of these people. I've barely met them.
Would it be fair to say that, given that we've outlined our side of the story today, I would love the people to decide what the definition of a truth or mistruth or a lie is, in the sense that I would hope that they get some clarity today.
Well, on that, Mr. Tubridy, has there been pre-litigation letters issued on your behalf, both of your behalves,
Not
at
that
this
I'm aware
point?
of. No, I don't
Not
think
at
so,
this
no.
point. That's
No,
for
is the answer.
clarity. Yes, thank you.
No, thank you.
No.
And I just want to clarify a number of things. You named Trish Whelan, Mr. Kelly.
Yeah.
Did Trish Whelan work for your office?
No,
Or
Trish Whelan is RTE legal.
RTE Legal? And Katrina Fallon?
She's in the legal department as well.
Both RTE Legal?
On RTE, yeah.
Okay. And I want to go back because I've been trying to put myself in Dee Forbes' shoes for the past couple of weeks.
Sure.
I just want you to give me an outline pre the 19th of December. Is there any contemporaneous note of what gave rise to that email or that meeting that took place beforehand? We start, if I'm not mistaken, on the 19th of December with your documents.
Oh, sorry.
And it's proposed terms for new contract, and that's on the 19th of December. But I'm just looking from that perspective where the starting point was that gave rise to the commercial relationship, the 75,000 commercial relationship.
Sorry, I was just looking for the. So what's the exact question?
So the
Sorry.
question is, if I was Dee Forbes?
Yeah.
I'm trying in my head to figure out what it was that you put to Dee Forbes that you say RTE came up with the plan, the scheme to give 75,000.
Yeah.
Like, what gave rise to it?
So, the sponsor, RTE's probably biggest sponsor, and RTE wanted these events. So they came with the idea of the events, where they'd happen, when they'd happen, mini late roadshow, Ryan Tubridy Renault associations.
Okay, so RTE.
Completely separate to the contract.
Okay.
To Ryan's radio and TV contract. And the first 3 were done in year 3 because of COVID, and then obviously there's contractually there's still another 6 out.
So was it the position that had that 75,000 not been on the table that Mr. Tubridy would have walked from his contract?
Not at all. No. Ryan has other contracts, as I said, with BBC. He'd cover for different people on BBC, and he'd have his book contracts.
So there was no pressure put on Ms. Forbes in which there was another, you didn't say, Mr. Tubridy's been offered a job in BBC, and if we don't do A, B or C.
And actually, quite the opposite. It was at those meetings, Ryan took €105,000 pay cut per annum. So that was the 525,000. So if we were looking, if that was the pressure point, you wouldn't have reduced,
And we've heard that. So I'm just trying to ascertain why Ms. Forbes would give away, effectively, €75,000, which really was RTE's public revenue.
But you see it actually, so if I can just explain. When the invoices were made at ASIS, they were directly emailed to RTE, and that's what was necessary to process them at ASIS.
Well, they're much further on. I'm trying to ascertain why she would have entered.
So the first invoice was Renault, but why she would enter into an agreement?
Well, if there was, why she first of all gave a guarantee, and what was at the back of.
We're going over time. If you answer the question.
I mean, essentially that was in case the sponsor relationship is with RTE, not with us. And for me, what that was about was if there was a new sponsor in, that during the duration of the contract, that we would be able to work with the next sponsor. But it wasn't ever an RTE payment. It was Renault, and Renault were always paying the invoice. It was never meant to be RTE to pay this, ever.
Yes, but they received it back in terms of the way the deal was constructed, the benefit of that 75,000.
But
you've contradicted, by the way, what Dee Forbes has told us in the Public Accounts Committee previously, back over the last few years, that the reason that they had to pay these fees is because the talent, the stars, would walk.
I just want to absolutely voice again my displeasure at having to sit here through a mockery of what has happened. Nobody won anything yesterday. Nobody. Least of all, our reputations to solve problems. And I have such a headache from listening to rubbish. There is no solution among any of you. All you want to do is bicker and blame somebody else, and all of the things are in your control. Well, I received a document from your Minister for Housing, Taoiseach, or Taoiseach, whichever you are, and I am not looking to shout back at you, so I'm going to calm down and I'm going to put the issue to you. I got a document from your Minister for Housing yesterday. I hadn't decided how I was going to vote because I've been speaking on planning for 3 years. We have a very serious issue of 70,000 planning grants that are not commenced and will not commence until your government, Taoiseach, deals with the viability issue. They're not building houses because they're being giving planning for houses that aren't wanted. People won't buy them, developers won't build them. The only people that are buying these types of densities are housing bodies and county councils. Now, you and your minister have failed to influence a policy that makes viability a planning consideration. So, albeit that I'm a member of the regional group who put forward 8 very, I would say, constructive proposals, you can't implement the viability one. You just can't. Because this document, instead of actually bringing down and lowering densities, which is what I have asked for 3 years be done to encourage viability, it increases densities. Could you believe that? Now, you probably don't know what I'm talking about, Taoiseach, because neither did the Minister for Housing. And that's the worrying bit. We're standing here talking about homelessness, blaming landlords, and there won't be another unit built if you continue with this policy. He told me he got it the night before. I can understand why, because he must have got some young college student in their first year to write it. He certainly didn't get anybody with any brains to write it. So I think if you go back on the blacks of this House for 3 years, you'll definitely get the 70,000 planning grants commenced if you take the advice that I have given for 3 years in relation to planning policy and process. And it's time we all stopped the BS. I won't say it now, Count Corla, but it's a time when we should be pulling together, because if I have one homeless child in Wexford, one child that isn't accommodated, I'll be bringing it here and it'll be sitting in the Count Corla's lap. And I want an answer in relation to why your housing minister would insult my intelligence and that of the developers who are trying to help you in this country. An answer.
Yeah, through the chair, if I could say that, in the parliamentary debate, sometimes I get a bit, I don't agree with the old trope that's put out that everybody's talking rubbish except myself, which is what your position is. And I think we just need to reflect on that. This is a parliamentary debate where people have legitimate views they can put forward. And I may disagree with the opposition on certain issues, but I respect their right to put the points to me. And I don't declare everything as rubbish. I don't sort of say the minister is listening to people with no brains, as if everybody out there is foolish and stupid. No, but sorry, I'm addressing the issue now. You've made those points, Deputy, and I think it's legitimate for government to robustly defend what it's doing in respect to housing. Now, the Housing for All plan is a plan. I have seen no other plan in terms of either comprehensiveness or in terms of the actual various schemes, from the affordable housing scheme to the first home scheme to the Cree Conaha, to the cost rental scheme, to the 30,000 houses that were, and apartments that were built last year, and in terms of a whole range of other initiatives. Without question, there's been a fundamental intervention in housing by this government. That cannot be argued with. What can be argued with is pace, scale, and how we can deliver more houses more quickly, and I think modern methods of construction is one effective way of doing that. In respect of the planning, we have published a comprehensive planning bill, which is going to encounter opposition in the House. That's legitimate for people to oppose it. But the government has taken decisive action in a fundamental reform of our planning code, because we do need to improve the delivery on the planning side. Now, I don't believe you should make viability a condition of planning, because we'd never get anything through Board Planala or judicial review. But, sorry, it shouldn't be part of the planning process. It should be part of policy in terms of... but sorry, and in our view, we are... And again, developers will argue this, but developers will argue on a continuous basis for more and more responses. But we do listen to what builders are saying and what people are saying generally. And particularly in terms of compact apartment building, there's a viability issue. I accept that. And therefore we have taken measures to try and improve that situation. And we are reviewing other measures which can help viability if we can take costs out. No, we don't take measures to make the matter worse. And if I could say, but Deputy, I've already outlined 30,000 houses were built last year. There are more people now working in the construction industry. Sorry, as I've said, Deputy, largest number of first-time buyers last year. That's not the picture you've created in your presentation. And in addition to that, next year there'll be higher targets again in respect of social housing and in terms of the work of the Land Development Agency. But all of that, in my view, the foundations are there. We have to keep this going for the next 10 years in terms of the level of housing we have to build. And we do need a faster and better delivery on the planning side.
Deputy Murphy. The foundations are not dug, never mind there. And that's the problem. We have 70,000 housing units with planning ready to go. Do you understand what viability is, Taoiseach? Could you pass it on to your Minister for Housing? Because he doesn't. He actually doesn't know what a specific planning policy requirement is. And you don't get that in what you're talking about, your Planning and Development Act. You get it from this, which is the greatest load of rubbish. We have to bring a specific planning policy requirement where we have county development plans that are already formed in order to change the densities. We are months away from doing it. Months, Count Corla. At least maybe 6 or 12 months. That's why you won't have a house built or your first-time buyers. I'm not worried about those first-time buyers. I'm worried about the ones being evicted from the landlords who can no longer pay mortgages because of interest rates and for many other reasons. And you are expecting landlords to do your job without compensating them. We shouldn't have an eviction ban. It's your fault. It's your government's fault. That's why we have it. You're expecting landlords to do your job. You have a solution, but you don't understand it.
We're not all as ingenious. We're not all, Deputy, as ingenious as you are, clearly. But I want to make the point. That last year 30,000 houses were built. So you keep saying that a house will be built. 30,000 were built last year, and we need to do more in the years to come. I am interested in first-time buyers. You may not be. I am. Because we do need because the younger generation, Deputy, needs access to housing too. And they need to know that from the next decade, younger people coming out of school, getting into work and so on, will have an opportunity. Look, Deputy, with the greatest respect, I listened to you. I did not interrupt you. You seem incapable of hearing an alternative viewpoint. You're playing to a gallery here in an audience. I'm trying to address the issues that you're doing, and you're playing politics. I'll say what I wish to say, Deputy, which is Parliament, in accordance with the parliamentary process. I'm endeavouring to make our point, and there's just constant interruption all of the time. You either wanted a reasonable debate or not, and to go through the issues.
Please, Deputy.
But the problem is, Deputy, you use language in terms of everybody is stupid according to you, except yourself. I am saying that's exactly what you're saying. That's exactly what you were saying. That's exactly what you're saying.
Deputy, please.